Let me ask you a question. Would you trust a 17, 18, 19-year-old fresh out of high school young person with $100,000? Would you trust that same said young person fresh out of high school? Would you trust him with, let's say, $2 million? Would you trust that same said 17, 18, 19-year-old fresh out of high school person with your life? And would you trust them to deliver on your brand promise? Well, folks, today I'm going to talk to you about how the Air Force, how the military, high performance combat air crews all around the world, why and how we are able to trust a 17, 18, 19-year-old fresh out of high school. And we trust them with millions of dollars of equipment. We trust them with our lives, and we trust them with our organizations, and we trust them to deliver on our brand promise of the military. No matter what it is, when there is lives at stake, when there is the protection of people at stake, whatever the case may be, we have figured out how we build a level of trust that we know that 17, 18, 19-year-old person can clearly deliver on our brand promise. How is it that we do that? Well, folks, what we do in the military and in the combat air crews, we basically are providing a level of trust that we call no-fail trust. What is no-fail trust? Well, no-fail trust, it is a framework that is built on the right training, it's built on the right process, and more importantly, it is built on people and how we empower people and hold them accountable. That training, that process, and the empowerment and trust and accountability of people, it is further fortified by 7 critical skill sets that we infuse and help our people to own from day one of their training. Right now, I want you to think about in your organization, what is it that you have in place that is providing the right training, the right process that empowers your people to then allow them to be accountable to the organization and to each other. So strap on, we're going to go on a journey, and we're going to talk about no-fail trust and how you can emulate some of these secrets that we utilize in the military and in combat aviation to provide the highest levels of trust. But before we do that, folks, I want to tell you a little bit about who is Jason. Who is Lieutenant Colonel Jason Harris? Well, folks, it starts with me. I'm originally from Oakland, California. And being from Oakland, California, what I like to tell people is that I am number 2 of my mother's 6 children, the product of 3 marriages and 4 different fathers to her 6 children. Again, people often ask me, was I a natural born leader? And I'm not sure if I was a natural born leader, but you know what? I had to learn how to lead from an early age. Growing up in Oakland, California, where I grew up in the inner cities of Oakland, California, I got to witness things that no child should have to witness. My home was just a stone's throw away from the Black Panther Party headquarters. So much so that some of the founders of the Black Panther Party actually spent time with my grandmother on her porch. And so much so that I actually benefited from the free lunch programs that they started in Oakland, California. So at an early age, folks, I had to learn what leadership was, what leadership wasn't, and I had to learn what trust was and what trust wasn't. And one of the first people to teach me about what trust was my mother. My mother began to instill in me so many different lessons at an early age so that she could ensure that I would survive the inner city streets of Oakland. My mother instilled in me lessons that would allow me to go along a path of success and that I would not fall victim to some of the other things that were around me. And so I'm eternally grateful to my mother. And that is part of why I am so in love with this idea of trust. Because my mother instilled in me a level of trust at an early age, and my mother taught me what it was to trust. And when I talk about no-fail trust, the trust that my mother taught me, it wasn't just your garden variety of trust. Again, it was the highest levels of trust that were required to enable me to make it through the inner city streets of Oakland. And so one of the things that my mother would tell me as I was growing up is she would say, son, She would say, you know what, you have to take care of people. You have to treat people with the ultimate respect. You have to know, no matter what their rank is, no matter what their position is, you have to make sure, son, that you look at them as a person and that you treat them with value. You treat them with respect. And one of the other neat things that my mother would tell me oftentimes, because by the way, my mother enlisted into the Army when I was a kid to get us out of Oakland. And one of the things that my mother would tell me after she had enlisted in the Army and got us out of Oakland, she would say, son, if you're going to go into the military, go into the Air Force. Son, if you're going to go into the military, go in as an officer. And for those lessons, I am beyond thankful, because it was that wisdom that my mother provided me that allowed me to pursue an opportunity to become an Air Force officer. On the screen right now, you see these bullet points of all of these accomplishments. You know, sometimes in the military, what we call this is a hero slide. Well, folks, here, I want to let you guys know today, I am no hero. I am just that little boy from Oakland, California, that wanted to figure out how to get out of poverty. I'm that little boy from Oakland that wanted to follow the footsteps and the guidance of the wisdom that his mother provided for him at an early age. And at the end of the day, all of those accomplishments on that slide, more importantly, what those accomplishments are for me personally, is they are nothing more than a testament to the level of no-fail trust that was present with me and my teammates, that was present in all aspects of every single thing that I did, from the time I went to the Air Force Academy, to all the times in combat, to even now as I continue to serve in uniform. It's a level of no-fail trust that has the right training, has the right process, and it has empowered people that are accountable to each other, empowered people that are accountable to the organization. Those accomplishments are also founded upon an idea that is based in commitment, not in compliance. And we'll spend a little bit of time talking a little bit more about what commitment and compliance is. But before I go further, I want to tell you guys, as you see that slide, you see a picture of my daughter and I. Many of you might have children, whether they're young or old, and just like those that you work with, at home, at work, you have some traditions. For me at home, one of the traditions that I had with my daughter was every Friday, we would go get donuts. That was a commitment that we had to each other, that she would expect and that I would expect. Well, as we know, folks, the last year, we have all had a lot of challenges, a lot of changes. There's a worn out word that people have been using called pivot. But whatever the word is, we have had to figure out how to continue those commitments. And so for me, I had to figure out, how could I keep that commitment to my daughter? How could I keep that commitment to my family? How could I keep the commitment and the trust and the accountability to those that I work with, to my teammates? And so for us, we figured out that we could still go and have donuts, and we just had to eat those donuts in the car. For you right now, I want you to think about, what type of commitments did you have prior to COVID? What type of commitments have you had prior to any type of significant change at home as well as in the workplace? And how did you maintain the ability to continue to be held accountable, to continue to be accountable to those commitments, to ensure that people knew that they could still trust you to deliver on whatever that promise is, deliver on whatever that commitment is? For me at home, it was donuts and my daughter. For you, it might be something different. What is that thing that you stay true and committed to, no matter what the changes are, no matter what the chaos is, so that it allows you to stay grounded, not only at home in your personal life, but also to stay grounded, stay committed, stay engaged at work, in your organization, stay engaged and stay committed to your team. Because at the end of the day, that is one of the foundational elements of how we build trust. We have to make certain that we are committed to each other, committed to what we are doing each and every day. Well, as I talk about compliance and commitment, as I talk about trust, I want to talk to you guys about what it was like to fly C-130s in the Air Force. Folks, C-130s, it is one of the best airplanes in the Air Force, in my opinion. I did 4 combat deployments in C-130s, and each time it was something new, something exciting. And I want you guys to strap on and go on this journey with me so I can share with you what it's like to be in the seat of a C-130. I want you to picture yourself that you're sitting in the right seat of that C-130 as my co-pilot, and I'm sitting in the left seat as the aircraft commander. As part of that 6-man combat crew, right behind us, we have what's called a flight engineer. That flight engineer, they are the person that, in my opinion, is one of the smartest people because they know where all the buttons and knobs are in that airplane. They know where all the cable and lining of that aircraft is at. And then to the rear right of us, what we have is our navigator. That navigator is trained to help us to figure out where do we go, when do we go, and how do we get there in an expeditious manner. And in the back of that aircraft, we have what I consider one of the most important people on the crew, and that is our loadmaster. On a combat crew, we have 2 loadmasters. We have one that maintains either the front side of the air cargo compartment or the rear, or we have one that maintains and watches the left door and one that watches the right door. Those 2 loadmasters, they are typically that 17, 18, 19-year-old, fresh out of high school video game expert that we have trained, and they are responsible for more than 85% of our aircraft. Let me say that again. That loadmaster, 17, 18, 19 years old, fresh out of high school, no college experience or college degree a lot of times, and they are responsible for more than 85% of that aircraft. Millions of dollars worth of equipment, and they are responsible. And so those are the folks in the back, that loadmaster. So now, as we are sitting there, imagine that we are in Iraq and we're getting ready to fly into Baghdad, and we started about 25,000 feet. We're going to go ahead and strap on our helmets. We're going to strap on our night vision goggles. And as we pull down those night vision goggles, you're going to see this interesting green glow because that's what it looks like under those night vision goggles. And as we begin to prepare to descend into the combat environment, prepare to descend to go and arrive in the Baghdad International Airport, the loadmasters, one will post up in the left door, one will post up in the right door, and they are looking and scanning for threats. And imagine we've flown all the way down to the runway and we are setting up to make the perfect landing. And when I say the perfect landing, this is the landing that we can write home about, folks. And as we are coming down, the radar altimeter, it's an audible thing. It'll tell us, it'll say 500 feet, or the navigator will let us know, hey, you're about 500 feet off the ground. Then it'll get to 100 feet. And at about 100 feet, we start transitioning our eyes towards the end of the runway because we're ready to make the perfect landing. At 50 feet, we start bringing the yoke of the aircraft up, that nose, start bringing it up to start flaring the aircraft. And as we're just a few feet off the ground, about to make the perfect landing, in that moment, we hear, go around, go around, go around. In that moment, when you hear go around, go around, go around from the loadmaster, what do you do? Most people, they will hesitate. They will question themselves. In that moment, when your feet off the ground, you do nothing more than execute what you've been trained to do. I'll grab the yoke of the aircraft and I'll begin to pull it to 7 degrees nose high. I'll begin to add full power. And as I add full power, I'm going to look over at you. And as I look over at you, I'm going to tell you gear up. And as I tell you gear up, you're going to start bringing the gear up, and we're going to continue to fly away from the ground and deconfigure the aircraft. As we climb away from that ground, deconfiguring the aircraft, getting it set to climb away from the threat or the potential threat, it is only then when we get to a safe altitude, say about 1,000, 1,500 feet above the ground, it is only in that moment that I will say, Loadmaster, why did we go around? And it's in that moment that that loadmaster will succinctly say, Pilot, the reason we went around is because of whatever the case. They might say it's because there was something on the runway. They might say the gear were not fully set. It doesn't, the load in the back was not tied down and it will cause a problem. But at the end of the day, that loadmaster is going to tell me, the aircraft commander, the CEO of that aircraft, the corner office person with the window view, they're going to say, Pilot, the reason we went around was because I could see what you could not see. For you all right now in your organizations, who is your loadmaster? Who is that person that might be fresh out of high school, might not have the same level of experience as you, might not have the same level of training, but they are the loadmaster and they can see what you cannot see? Maybe if you're in a hospitality organization, say a large hotel, it's that person who sits at that front desk who checks in some of your customers. In many organizations, we employ people that might be fresh out of high school and they might not have the same level of experience as us, but they can see what you cannot see. Again, in your organization, who is your load master? I want you to take a moment right now, and in the chat, I want you to just type out the initials if you know that load master. And if you have to think about that and you need to find that load master, I want you to write a note down to yourself that you're going to find out who is your load master. Find out something about them. Because folks, again, that load master, they can see what you cannot see. And when they tell you to go around, the question is do you listen? Now, I want to go back to that no fail trust framework, and I want to articulate for you right now, how is it that I can emphatically trust, no matter what, that 17, 18, 19-year-old fresh out of high school video game expert with my life, with millions of dollars. It goes back to the no fail trust framework. We gave them the right training. That right training in the military, that starts with basic training. In your organization, maybe that training, maybe that starts with your onboarding process. What does that look like? Everyone in the military goes through some type of basic training, and it's a common shared experience. After that, that load master, we send that person to a basic course about being a basic load master. And then we ratchet it up to the next level when they decide which airplane they're going to fly on, and we send them to training for that specific airplane. So if that loadmaster flies C-17s, the loadmaster who flies a C-17 and a C-130, the two different types, they both go through basic training. They both go through an advanced training, and then one goes to C-17 loadmaster training, and one goes to C-130 loadmaster training. And then after we put them through training, then we support that training with a process. And when I say a process, we support that training with things such as a checklist. And only then have we now empowered them so that they can deliver on our brand promise, so that they can execute the mission every single time, no matter what we ask of them. For you, what does your training look like? What does your process look like? With all the changes that we've had in the last several months, have you taken a moment to reevaluate what your training looks like? Have you taken the time to reevaluate what your processes look like? And have you taken the time to evaluate who your people are and what kind of empowerment you've given them and what kind of trust you've built and the foundations for trust within your organization? Because that, my friend, is what makes the difference in a level of no-fail trust, a level of accountability. Research has shown that organizations that are the most preferred organizations, the number one thing that has them as the most preferred organizations, according to Fortune magazine, it's trust. And when they did another research, they looked at companies, they looked at competitors, and they basically realized that those that have a high trust culture versus a low trust culture, they outshine their competitors and outshine them in terms of bottom line and profitability by almost 300%. Let me say that again. They outshine their competitors in a high trust environment by almost 300%. Now, I talked to you about the framework of no-fail trust, that training, that process, and those people. And then beyond that, I mentioned those 7 critical skill sets. Those 7 critical skill sets, that is professional knowledge, situational awareness, assertiveness, decision-making, communication, leadership, and adaptability and flexibility. Those 7 critical skill sets, from the moment we have young people that fresh out of high school start basic training through the advanced training and that whole process, we are infusing them with these critical skill sets so that we know that when they say go around, we know that we've given them the right training. We know that they have the right professional knowledge. We know that they understand what it means to have situational awareness. For you, just taking situational awareness, what might that be? It might be that person who's working that front desk in your organization that's observing what the client and the customer's experience looks like. And when they see something, they go over there and they help to fix it. Why? Because they're committed. I mentioned a culture of commitment versus compliance. Here's the difference, folks. The culture of compliance is that person that says, I clock in precisely at 8:30 a.m. and precisely at 4:30 p.m., I am gone. And so at 4:20 p.m., you walk up and you say, hey, Bill, I got something and I need your help with. Bill says, sure, I'll help you. But in the back of his mind, he's thinking at 4:30 p.m., I'm out of here. That's compliance culture. That commitment culture at 4:20 p.m., when you come over to Bill and say, hey, Bill, I need some help. Bill says, sure, no problem, boss. I got this. And it doesn't matter what time of day, it doesn't matter what the project is, Bill is going to go above and beyond to ensure that he helps you with whatever it is that you're asking for help with. Why? Because Bill is committed to the organization. Bill is committed to you as a leader. Bill is committed to you and the team. That's the difference between a culture that's built on commitment over compliance. Again, folks, as we begin to look further and deeper at all of these things and our culture, it is our responsibility as leaders to ensure that we create the foundations of trust in our organization. It is our job as leaders to ensure that we provide our people, our organizations, our teams with the right training, provide them with the right process so that we can empower them to then be accountable to themselves, to each other, and to the organization. Folks, as we close, I want you to consider what your role is as a leader in your organization. I want you to consider what your role is and what everyone's role is when it comes to creating the right culture within an organization. Creating a culture and a foundation that's built on trust, that's built on commitment, that's built on accountability. And all those things, they lead to higher levels of employee engagement. And ultimately, they lead to customer satisfaction, client satisfaction. And so our job as leaders is to ensure that we provide the right training, the right process to empower our people. And what I want you to think about, folks, is we are in the combat of life, as we are on this mission to make certain that we are successful. I want you to think about what your role is in the organization. I want you to think about what your role is in terms of the culture. And I want you to think about what you are going to do today to ensure that you are the leader that helps to cultivate a culture that's built on commitment and that's built on trust. Because I promise you, your loadmaster, your people, that 17, 18, 19-year-old fresh out of high school team member, they are counting on you to lead, and they are counting on you to execute a level of no-fail trust that they can depend on. Thank you.